You want me to put that on my Tudor?
This one's wife. NFI'd. Clooney snub. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. This one's wife is increasingly NFI'd. For those of you who don't know what it means not fucking invited. A clear snub that's issued. This one's wife only gets invited to things as a consequence of being this one's wife. Nobody would invite her in their own right because she's boring, talent-free, and has increasingly a reputation for being a troublemaker. You'll recall back at the wedding of this one's wife and this one, in 2018, the Clooneys were invited, and they memorably explained when asked why they were there, they basically said that they didn't know her and in effect didn't really know why they had been invited. Cue much sniggering amongst individuals at the blatant hobnobbing that this one's wife was engaging in. But it's not a surprise. This is blatant character trait acquisition. Rather than invite members of her family who have a legitimate reason for being at her wedding, they're not important enough. They don't belong to a group that is meaningful enough to her with regard to the way that her narcissism looks at them. Their character traits and residual benefits aren't really worth looking out for any longer, and instead, they can be shunted out of the fuel matrix and replaced with people that she doesn't know, but have much more attractive character traits and residual benefits, i.e. people like George and Amal Clooney. Consequently, they're in, family are out. The only person, of course, attending from her side was Mum Doria, the loyal lieutenant. Everybody else was told, no, you're not coming. This shows the vacuous and transparent nature of this one's wife. But now she's finding out what it's like on the other side, as increasingly she's NFI'd, and it's happened again. The headline reads, Clooney's clobber, this one and this one's wife. Royal outcasts Prince Harry and this one's wife are humiliated and enraged after being cavalierly snubbed by former pals George and Amal Clooney. Well, I don't think they were ever actually pals, were they? Although this one's wife would believe that they are. Her deluded narcissism would tell her, oh, close personal friends of mine, even though the reality is different. It is the case, as is the situation with many narcissists, the actual facts that everybody else understands does not match with the narcissist's reality. That's because her narcissism creates an alternative reality where she is centre of the universe. They ended up missing the A-listers' star-studded gala, say sources. Harry, 39, and this one's wife, 42, were forced to watch from 3,000 miles away as George, 62, and Amal, 45, reigned supreme at the Albee Awards in New York, held by the Clooney Foundation for Justice. The bash was graced by a cavalcade of power players, including Randy Gerber and Cindy Crawford, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, Matt Damon and his wife Luciana Barroso, and Rachel Weisz and Daniel Craig. This one's wife would have been creaming herself to be amongst this lot. A-lister, A-lister, A-lister. She would want to have been invited. She would want to have been pictured. Her narcissism would be getting a complete wide-on for this situation. But she was snubbed. Of all the snubs they've had to deal with since their move to Hollywood, this is probably the most hurtful, snitches an insider. Indeed, it would cause significant wounding for Harry's wife in terms of this. She would regard the Clooneys as non-intimate secondary sources. the fact that they've not invited her would actually cause moderate wounding. But then that wounding becomes amplified as a consequence of the lost opportunity to hobnob with all the various people that I've just listed, and then is exacerbated further by having the snub aired in the media. Thus, what starts off as moderate wounding gets bigger and bigger. George and Amal went from being their wedding guests and trusted confidants to totally ghosting them. It's a huge kick in the teeth and a massive embarrassment they can't really explain or wrap their heads around. This one's wife's narcissism, of course, will come to her rescue. There would be a possibility that she would be so bold as to contact them and go, the invitation seemed to have got lost in the post, or at least getting a flunky to try that. But ultimately, one suspects that this one's wife's narcissism would recognise the further risk of rejection resulting in her not attempting a direct attempt to nullify the threat to control posed by not being invited. Instead, she would be dismissive. Well, we couldn't go. I had milkshakes to make for the children. Or, not really my kind of thing, wouldn't be bothered about going. It's a complete lie, but her narcissism will cause her to reject wanting to be there in order to nullify the threat to control through the third assertion of control by staying in a position of withdrawal. Make no bones, the failure to be invited would have sent her nuts. Her ignited fury would have gone kaboom. She would have felt furious. She would have felt weakened. She would have felt lost. But then her narcissism through the ignition of fury enables her to deal with it by essentially suggesting, not bothered about them anyway, I've got better friends these days, and thus rejects them. It's just the latest disappointment the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have endured since quitting their royal duties in 2020 and moving to a $14 million mansion in Montecito, California, where they live with their kids Archie and Lilibet. As has been recently reported, big buck showbiz deals have evaporated and one-time friends like the Clooneys have turned their backs. Truth is, George and Amal don't have time for this one's wife and Harry's drama or fakery, explains the insider. Once again, the collateral consequences of her behaviour come home to roost. The gala would have been a dream event for the two, but George and Amal knew only too well the circus that follows them would have ruined it for the others. The brush-off leaves little doubt. The Clooneys have decided to cast the Sussexes out of their social circle. Spies tattle. It's baffling to the Sussexes, because they've never done anything to warrant this sort of treatment, says our source, or at least that's how this one's wife will see it. Everybody else can see quite clearly why they wouldn't be invited. As far as they can see, it's come totally out of left field. George and Amal were at their wedding. Harry and this one's wife consider them real friends and part of their inner circle. Sources say Harry and this one's wife even came close to choosing the Ocean 12's hunk as one of Archie's godfathers. Now they can't even get him to return a phone call. They've called and sent messages and even gifts, but they've been totally blanked. At this point, they've given up trying, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. Thus, this one's wife has been engaging in some hoovering of the Clooneys to try and bring them back under control, and it's singularly failed, and therefore her narcissism decided that the direct assertion of control can no longer be done, and she'll have moved to the indirect or withdrawal. The fact is, it's another instance of this one's wife's behaviour resulting in a collateral consequence of people thinking, don't want anything to do with her. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.